it for the love, so now I'm doing what I want.
I did it for the love of the shit.
Doing it for the love, so now I'm doing what I want.
I did it for the love of the shit.
Hip hop and rap, yeah, that's where my heart's at.
And we're alive. John, welcome back. Fantasy Firebox, episode 34, the night before the Major League Baseball season. I know John's pumped. I've known John for a long time. We've been doing this for a long time. And this is John's cup of tea right here. This is his favorite part of the year. He was already excited and cheesing before we even went live. Tony Jigsaw Control, John Coker. John, welcome back. Football. No, not football. I'm sorry. Baseball is back. And so is John. How you doing, man?
Good. It was, fantasy baseball season, man. Draft time is, I almost feel like it's almost more fun than football. Almost, not quite.
That's tough to say. When you start saying it's tougher than football.
It's just, it takes more to do it really well. You have to know the analytics, do your research. It's not pulling out a cheat sheet draft day and rolling into a room with a one pager and just picking a football team. Anybody could do that. I mean, you get rankings here and there. Baseball is just, with the different positions. It's not just running back, receiver. I mean, you got infield, outfield, starting pitchers across the board. It's not 8 versus 8 every week. It's like 22 versus 22 every week.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of analytics. It's a lot of research. Like you said, a lot of brushing up on your skills and your knowledge. It's really tested. And, this show, we're going to touch on some NFL a little later, but the main thing is baseball because we are hours away from the opening pitch. And let me ask you this, John, before we even get into, because I know you've had some drafts, so you have a lot of good stories to tell us when we talk about ADP and, for instance, where certain guys, whether it be rookies or pitchers versus hitters. But last year, 60-game season, I know we've talked about it before, but as we're closer, have you had any different mindset of, do I look at those 60 games? Do I throw them completely out the window? Or am I just focused on 2019? Like what? Because for me, I took a little bit of both, but how did you kind of take it when you looked at that shortened season last year?
It really depended on the type of player. And when I say type of player, most of it was age. So you look at, I don't know, 60% of Major League Baseball, you have guys that are in their prime. I'll say anywhere, let's just say 28 to 33. Okay. They have a track record of how they've performed, a solid track record for 5 years leading into the season. There's not going to be much change. You know who that player is. So then you got to look at the players, and it depends on position, starting pitchers as they get older and each position's a little different. But when you start looking at those older players, you have to, it's that hill, that downhill slide. It's like you skipped over 2020. It was an abbreviated season. So, how much weight do you put on it? But the last time they had a full season was 2 years younger. There's a pretty big difference between 34 and 36, 35 to 37, So I take that into consideration and really look at the player. And kind of on the flip side, the young guys, I don't necessarily just throw 2020 away. All right. These are the up and coming guys. They had their stint. That it's not much different than them getting called up in May of a regular, MLB season, May, June. And there was a lot more younger guys that got time to play in this, this COVID environment last year. So that I did put a little bit of stock into 2020. Obviously not just prorating out, times number of games. That's not going to work. But yeah, those younger guys, I definitely took that into consideration to see their progression, for the short season.
No, that's a good point. I was greedy. I could tell you that because I was kind of a hypocrite and the reason why I say that is because if the numbers weren't conducive to the way I was thinking, I threw them out. But if they look good, like the funny thing is, I'll give you an example. Corey Seager. So the year before Corey Seager hits 17 home runs in 134 games. Last year, he hits 15 home runs in 54 games. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at that number, and I'm bumping Corey Seager up this year. So, I mean, you're right. And he's a younger guy, but he did come back from injury. So there's a lot of different things. You guys like Ryan Zimmerman, who opted out completely and now comes back. There's a lot of interesting storylines. Now, before our man E-Bomb checking in, Chris, I'm going to get to that question in 1 second. But I got to ask John this because, again, John knows I'm a bold prediction guy, and we're going to get into one of my bold predictions later. But one of the predictions I had, I was on the Daily Ticket with Sean Brace about 2 weeks ago, and he always stumps me a little bit. We give you show notes, and he's always like, all right, give me your top three, maybe like surprises, not sleepers, but your top three surprises that'll happen. And one of my surprises was the fade Nolan Arenado. And I said, I don't even think he's going to get 25 to 30 home runs this year. I think he's going to have a down year. If you look at his numbers away from Coors Field, going into a different environment in St. Louis, listen, it's a long shot, but there's always that one guy every year. Remember, Goldschmidt was that guy a couple years ago. He was absolutely brutal before he went to St. Louis when he was in Arizona. So I'm just trying to pick a guy. Do you think there's any credence to Nolan Arenado having a down year based upon that going away from Coors Field and going out to St. Louis, even though he probably has better protection in the St. Louis lineup?
Look, he was falling in drafts like crazy. I mean, the one knock on him has been he has no speed. And when you're looking in the first round, it's those top pitchers, it's those, 5-tool guys. So, he was still floating into early to mid round 2 in previous years. To me, nothing changes about Arenado. It goes right to what we talked about in 2020. Nothing changes. I'm not worried about the Coors Field effect. You just mentioned, it's potentially better lineup that he's in. It's probably a better lineup. But I am throwing out 2020 for Nolan Arenado. All right. He's still a younger guy. The dude's 29 years old. He's been in MVP discussions. And in both of my fantasy drafts, he went in the 4th round. So to me, and I'll tell you what, he was not making it past me in either of those rounds because I went hitter, pitcher, pitcher. So 4th round, Arenado was one of the guys that I was really targeting. After I went that, if I could get Arenado, who in my opinion can perform like a 2nd round pick, and I got those 2 pitchers, I mean, I'm set really nice with 2 batters, 2 pitchers, and those hitters are both, they're both 1st, 2nd round. All 4 of them are 1st, 2nd round talents.
Say, I can't wait to get into that because we're gonna talk about formulate your roster because John always seems to I'll do 4 drafts and I think I'm doing really good, and then John shows you the drafts he did, and I'm like, wait a minute, how did you get those 5 guys in the first 5 rounds? Like, I have no idea. He does it though. I don't know how, but we're gonna get into that. But E-Bomb checks in our man Chris Exusion, who again, check him out, Off the Tee Matchups, new show, Heat Ratio Sports Network, does work for Fox Sports The Gambler as well. Monday nights had a great show. Had another good show coming up on Monday. Supposed to have Harry Mays on with them as well. Good stuff by Chris. He wants to know, I have Archie Bradley. You think he eventually becomes the closer? Obviously, he's talking about for the Phillies. I'm going to say yes, 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 and yes, only because I do not trust Hector Neris one bit. I don't care how good he's looked in spring training. I really don't care. That guy is a heart attack on the mound, and he is not going to last in that role, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been every day, multiple times a day, trying to figure out this Phillies closer situation. All right. Truthfully, the guy that I would love to see have it is Alvarado.
That's another guy, 100 miles an hour, right?
That's the guy that I would like to see have the job. The one issue with him, well, number one, he's the only lefty in the bullpen now.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw that, I knew he was out. All right.
Yep.
So then it was really between Bradley and Neris is the way I was looking at it. I'm like, they can't go with Neris, but I wasn't sold. I still think Alvarado's the best guy, but I mean, just with the moves that they've made, it doesn't look like he's, you're going to use that lefty when you need to use him, not hold him out until the 9th inning. So between there, I was shocked to see that Neris was named the closer. So yes, of the three, I would say Archie Bradley would be the one to own, but man, it's going to be a headache all year long. It really is.
I think it is too.
I mean, best case scenario, Neris falters early. Archie Bradley takes over the closer's role and never looks back. That's the best case scenario.
Yeah,
and if that's the case,
you're right.
Bradley could get 30 saves. The more likely scenario is Bradley gets 20. Alvarez somehow picks up 5, and you know what I mean, and then Neris gets 10.
I was trying to figure out the situation too, John, and I really have no idea why Girardi decided to go what he did, except for the simple fact that Girardi's a player's manager, and he may have just said, you know what, I'm going to give Neris the first opportunity to get out of what his mental instability, and say, you know what, maybe Hector can get over that hump, right? But he's going to have a short leash. He's going to be like the Showtime with the Apollo guy coming out with the hook. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to have a short leash.
Well, look, maybe all these signings is just what he needed. Look, when the rest of the bullpen has a 7 ERA and you're sitting there floating at 5, you're like the best guy. You're the best guy, out of the bunch. There's nobody pushing him. The whole bullpen was terrible. So now all of a sudden his job's in jeopardy. You know what I mean? Yes, he's still, one of the late inning guys, but maybe that competition is just what he needed.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, everybody needs a little kick in the ass every once in a while, and it definitely could have been what he needed. I just, certain pitchers like that, when they lose command and they lose control with such consistency like he did, it just scares me, and I don't think it's a guy you can trust. He lost way too many games. I mean, he reminded me like Armando Benitez, right? When he wasn't good. I mean, like every time he came in, you're like, oh, here we go. Right? What's going to happen?
Yep. Well, and I will say, look, there's a lot to be said about, the closer role and just relief pitchers in general. I really don't pay up for closers. First of all, my one league does saves and holds as one category, solds. With me personally, I love it. I'm waiting until the end of the game. You got 30 teams out there that all have 3 like late inning guys. And more often than not, your setup guys are more lights out than your closers. You look at all the closers out there, and even in terms of this Phillies bullpen, the only one that I would trust their ERA and WHIP to be at a decent level would be Alvarado. I don't really see Neris or Archie Bradley getting below a 1.2 WHIP or getting below a 3 ERA. I could possibly see that for Alvarado. All right. But you look at all the different bullpens out there. I mean, that's really, I would rather have that guy. Look, saves is a category if you do roto more often than not. But just drafting a guy that's going to get saves that kills you in the ERA and WHIP. Plus, think about the guy that you drafted. Okay, he has the role right now. I need to get saves. I'm in a draft. I need to get saves. So I'm going to take this guy, you know what I mean, just because he's supposedly getting saves, but there's still competition there. I'm going to draft a Hector Neris. All right. What happens through the 1 month of the season? He gets ousted out of his job. And why does he get ousted? Because his ERA was 5 and his WHIP was like 1.5. That just killed you. You know what I mean? From a fan, especially in a roto perspective. Not only did you not get the saves, he lost his job, and those peripherals weren't there. So it's really dragging your team down. So there's a lot of value in some of those closers in waiting per se. And really going after the top tier guys. You just got to be very careful not to pick from the scrap heap of just because this guy has a closer title, I need to take him because I need saves. You're better off getting the guy that's sharing some time. I mean, there's a ton of them out there.
Oh, there always is, and again, closers. There's always a ton of them that come up in May, June, July. I mean, you can have. You're picking a crop. I mean, they always change, right? Whether it be injuries, inconsistencies, the manager changes. There's so many different reasons. But
and even on top of that, not to cut you off, we could put this to rest. We spent enough time on relief pitchers.
Hector Neris,
but look, Major League Baseball is going to the game is changing. We have openers. That's screwing with guys getting wins and quality starts. You know what I mean? It's so much less predictable. And same thing, late innings. They're not there's probably 10 teams, 30% of the teams that have not committed to using a full-time closer, which is much less than in previous years. So the game changes and your fantasy mindset got to change.
No, that's a good point. I mean, and let's be honest. I'll just say this last thing. I've never, in all my years playing fantasy baseball, have never won a championship because I had the league's best closer. Right? I mean, so at the end of the day, it's almost like a kicker in football in the sense that you're not going to win because you have the best kicker. You might get some decent weeks, but come on, especially if you're not doing roto, you're doing head-to-head and put your lineup in once a week. I mean, you're talking about he's got to get you 3 saves to even be productive in that week.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you, I've got burnt by drafting relief pitchers multiple times. Even the good guys. I mean, think about Kenley Jensen a couple years ago, or you know what I mean? Not necessarily 2020. All of his peripherals stunk. I mean, and you're drafting this guy as the top closer in a 6th, 7th round. Like, I mean, that'll kill you. I forgot. I drafted the Blue Jays closer. This was quite some time ago. But he was locked out. I don't think it was Wagner or not. I don't know. I don't remember who it was. All I know, drafted him. What happens? He gets hurt 2 weeks into the season. You know what I mean? And then my second closer was a guy from the Reds. He got ousted out of his job. So not only did my guy get blown up because his arm was hurt, and my second closer was a pile heap guy that was just supposed to have the job. It killed me for the whole year because of it.
That's you don't recover from that. It's a wasted roster spot sometimes.
Well, and with the relief pitchers, if they have a bad stretch of 3 weeks or something, or if they're trying to pitch through some soreness or something and they're ineffective, that blows up your whole ERA for the year. You know what I mean? And when you're counting on that guy to have a 2.6 ERA with a 0.9 whip, 0.95 whip, and then they show up with something completely different, you know what I mean? You definitely didn't get value where you drafted them.
No, definitely not. 100%. 100%. I completely agree. Now we weren't going to get into this yet, but I got to touch on this because our boy Rick's checking in, says right off the top here, Francisco Lindor will be a top 5, arguably top 5 lineup, and looking to sign with the Dodgers after Seager leaves next year. Big year. Look at Rick puts a lot of different spins in one comment. I like it. He's already talking about Lindor going to the Dodgers, right? And Seager, like, what?
He's been thinking about that all day. He's been planning it out, you know?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I mentioned, let's do this, because I mentioned Corey Seager because I think that he's going to have an unbelievable year this year. I do. And I think his ADP is super low for a guy who I think will easily hit 25 to 30 home runs at a position of shortstop who, after maybe 3, 4, and 5, it's a crapshoot, right? So, I don't know why he's going so low, but Lindor, the Mets did a lot of different things in the offseason, and he's going to have a lot of different ways, a lot of reasons to score runs. That's one thing you mentioned earlier in the show, John, about speed. Lindor can move. He's got a really good bat. He can steal bases. He can stretch those 2s and the 3s. And he's going to play in a really favorable ballpark in a nice lineup that has a lot of power behind it. So, for me, top 5. He's not my top 5. I can tell you that, because we're going to get in the top 5s later, or top 5 hitters, top 5 pitchers. But for you, John Lindor, I don't want to know who's your top 5, but is he a top 5 player right now?
He could be. I'm not taking him top 5, but he absolutely could be. I mean, you look at his credentials. He's done it time after time. Exclude 2020. Once again, this is a guy that's been in the league. You know what I mean? He's if anything, just peaking. So I'm not looking at 2020 stats when it comes to Lindor. So he's a career 285 hitter. Check that box. Past 3 years, he's averaged 34 home runs over the past 3 full years, with averaging 21 stolen bases. Boom. 30-20 guy on average the 3 years before, 2020, and he hits 285. Mark out the names, forget all that. that's a first round pick. You know what I mean? And typically the RBIs and runs are not even so much on the player as the lineup that he's in, where he's batting in the lineup. So you improve your lineup moving to the Mets. And, hopefully, he could be a top 5. But, in reality, I have him as about the number 5, I think, shortstop. In reality, just because shortstop, there's a lot of guys and a lot of options there.
Yeah, but what I mean though is there really elite options? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we talking about are we talking elite options? That's you know what I mean?
In terms of shortstop?
Yeah, just in shortstop.
Yeah, absolutely. You have Tatis, you have Story.
Well, I always
Trey
forget
Turner.
I forget. I always label for Tatis as an outfielder. I forget that he's a shortstop.
So you got those 3. Those are all going first, second round, and then Lindor's there as well. So but I'm high on a lot of guys. Bogarts isn't a bad pick. Even Gleyber Torres. You said Seager. I think he's going to have a heck of a year too.
Yeah, I like Corey this year. I'm zoning in on Corey Seager.
Let alone Alberto Mondesi. Look, he probably is getting drafted too high, but the dude's still going to lead the league in stolen bases. Think about it. Who's a true speed guy nowadays? Like even there was the Billy Hamiltons, the D Gordons, going back further, the Luis Castillos.
Oof.
So there were a lot of guys. Granted, they were one dimensional, but outside of Mondesi, you're talking about guys that are under 30 stolen bases, may lead the major leagues and, maybe second in major leagues in stolen bases under 30. So having a guy that could potentially get you 45, 50, like him or not, have a terrible batting average, not actually be that, that elite of a ball player, but this is fantasy, So it can get deep. I'm just saying, I feel like there's other, like a second base, it falls off a ledge real quick. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's a lot of depth where I could see a lot of guys being very serviceable shortstops outside of, it's really, yes, the big 3, Tatis, Story, and Trey Turner are the cream of the crop for me though.
Oh, the other thing too is there's a lot of multi-positional players, multi-eligibility, right, for shortstop. You got I haven't looked. Is Machado still eligible at shortstop this year?
No.
Okay, so because he played the whole year at third base,
depending on league rules, but yes,
right.
he is not in.
So that's a hit on the position a little bit, but
is the sneaky thing is Eugenio Suarez for the Reds.
For the Reds,
their third baseman. He was off to a slow start last year. He's still a young guy, but he really. I was trying to trade for him in the abbreviated season. I was going after him. I couldn't get him, but sure enough, he blew up just like I thought. Well, he's going to be the Reds starting shortstop this year. So all of a sudden, you're getting 30 plus home run power at the shortstop position, and he's fallen big time in drafts where it's really good value. I think I might have got him in both of my leagues, but the value is, I got him in the 6th round. So you're talking about,
that's tremendous.
Especially when you're talking, he's going to be shortstop and third base dual eligibility, in a few weeks.
Favorable ballpark, he's easily going to hit 30 home runs. If he stays healthy, he's easily going to hit 30 home runs. Suarez, he swings a mean bat, man. He really does. I like his stance too, but that's a good point. And again, for everybody listen, that's the value. That they're the kind of guys to look at, because when we get into this conversation here, when you have to talk about what you want to do at the top of your draft, whether it be I keep saying this, go pitcher, go hitter, depending on how you want to formulate your tier system, you're going to have to look for these value guys. It's just like DFS, where you take those big 3, big 4, and then you got to take those low value guys and hope that they work out. Now, go ahead, John. What's up?
No, I just to add on to Suarez,
please.
Look, and you go back and look at his last full season, 49 home runs, 40.
He was on fire.
So you're like, okay, that's an outlier. So you look at the year before that, 34, not monstrous, but also manageable. You know what I mean? This guy's only 29, so he's not on the downhill of his career. Last year, with just basically under 200 at bats, he had 15 home runs. So you look at the pace, you're almost a guaranteed 34 home runs.
That's tremendous.
6th-round pick at who will be a shortstop.
That's an ADP of about 70. Think about that. That's an ADP of about 70 to 75 to get you 30 to 35, possibly 40 home runs if he stays healthy. That's tremendous. That's how you win championships. Seriously, that's how you win championships. 100%.
Yeah, it's not the first
no
couple
doubt.
of rounds. I mean, anybody could just pick the studs. You can go off any cheat sheet you want for the first 4 rounds. That's fine.
Yep.
But now you locked yourself into somewhat of the structure of your team. If you didn't get starting pitching, now you're chasing. You didn't get speed, you're chasing. You didn't get power, you're chasing. You didn't get a middle infield. You don't have any outfielders. Now that's where all the strategy comes in. The first 4 rounds, 5 rounds, or 4 rounds is pretty easy.
Yep. Well, you're right. I mean, it's pick whoever you want. Basically, I mean, you're talking about a 5 to 10% drop off between certain players. It's not going to kill you because you can pick it up in the following round. But once you get past those 4 or 5 rounds, that's when you got to do your homework. That's when you really have to look at those names, right? Adam checking in. What's up, Adam? Says, let's go Phillies. Absolutely, 100%. Cannot wait for tomorrow and opening day. But from a fantasy perspective, he says Harper 2 home runs on opening day. Now, I've been all over, number 1, for the Phillies to win the National League East, and number 2, for Bryce Harper to win the MVP this year. John, you remember before COVID struck, before we even knew, I was big on the Bryce Harper MVP year wagon, and COVID struck. It never happened. It's going to happen. Bryce Harper is going to be the MVP this year in Major League Baseball. I fully believe that. This is going to be that year where he just excels like no other. He's ripping the cover off the ball. You could tell. I know he tweaked the back a little bit. People are worried about the back. I'm really not. Still going to play 135, 140, 150 games. Now, let me ask you this, though, because this is an outfielder. This is a position of strength, obviously. Tons of outfield options. But when I look at this, I still think Bryce Harper's a top 15 pick overall. I really do. I think he's right there. The numbers that he can put up in this very underrated Phillies lineup, I think people aren't talking enough about. And let me ask you this. Where did he go? You say you had a couple drafts. Where was the consensus of where Bryce Harper went in the drafts you have already done? Did he go top 15 overall, 2nd round maybe, or did he possibly go any later? Because now I'm curious.
He went round 2, pick 8, but it's a 12-teamer, so that's 20th overall. I have him ranked 13th.
Overall?
Overall.
Beautiful.
And he went 16th overall in my other draft.
And that's
and I will say,
going.
If he fell 2 more spots to me, I had the 3rd pick. So if he was there, I would have went with Bryce Harper over taking that pitcher.
So see, that's the dilemma, right? That's the dilemma. Now, here's let's get right into this because I don't want to sit here and break down every position and get boring and stagnant. We picked each other's brains a little bit. You've had some drafts. You have a lot of good statistical data in front of you to combat some of the things I'm going to say. And before we get into the top 5s, what I want to mention is because you make a really good point about Bryce Harper, and it makes me feel good because I always look to you. You're obviously the more knowledgeable guy when it comes to this. I'm a DFS guy. You are a traditional guy through and through. Do your research all year long. I had a scenario where for me, I think the number 1 pitcher in Major League Baseball for fantasy purposes this year is Trevor Bauer. It's not Jacob deGrom. It's Trevor Bauer. I look at a guy who had a 1.73 ERA, 0.73 whip on a team that was terrible in Cincinnati. And now he goes to a team in LA who is going to compete for another World Series. I just see Cy Young written all over him. I really do. I think he's going to be better than Cole. I think I have that feeling that he's the guy. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because I looked at this scenario where, say, you know how I like to get crazy and draft guys in the beginning, right? So I draft Trevor Bauer in the 1st round. With overall, number one overall. Here we are, crazy, right? I know you're already. Where's Acuna? Where's Soto? Right? Where's Trout? Where Tatis? Where they at? Just let's hear me out for a second. So I'm looking at. I draft Bauer number 1 overall, my hope is the drop off of talent from the pitching position after the top 5 or 6 is a good slide compared to the offensive weaponry that we see in this draft. So I'm thinking I could take Bauer overall as my top dog, and then I could swing back and possibly get Harper. Okay, in a 10-man league, right? Or a guy like Harper. I think it works out better because you tell me who's the pitcher I'm going to have to rely on, at 6 or 7, because they're all going to go. Right. So I'm curious to hear in your drafts what happened to you pitching wise, and what was the pitching sequence. And if I did look at one of your drafts and tell me if I took Bauer number 1 overall, would I be able to come back and get a guy like Harper at 19?
I don't even know where to begin with this. Okay.
I love it.
I really don't.
I love it. I always got these things for you, man.
Oh my goodness. So yes, actually no, if you took him, he would have been gone in both leagues.
So Harper would have been gone.
Yeah, in my 12-team league, he went 20th, so he would have been there. But in a 12-team league, you might have had different drafting patterns because there were, and this is Roto as well. So there were only 4 pitchers taken in the top 20.
Okay, but that's a Roto league. So
correct.
You're right.
Regardless, all right. So let me start at the very basics.
Yeah, let's go.
As much as you believe in Trevor Bauer, I do not believe in Trevor Bauer.
All right, give it to me.
So, I mean, you want to talk about elite pitchers? I do not have him as an elite pitcher. Last year, the stats he put up, which don't get me wrong, I mean, he had good numbers. All right, I mean, he had elite numbers.
Elite numbers, yeah. That's right, John. He had elite numbers.
Yes, against my Pittsburgh Pirates, against the Cincinnati Reds, against the devastated Chicago Cubs team that's a shell of its former self, and against a Brewers team that did not progress as much as everyone expected after 2019. Okay. With COVID and pitching all in the NL Central, you had a ton of players that look at Kenta Maeda. He's another one. Look, this guy is not going to be where he's getting drafted. Him and Trevor Bauer, to me, are 2 of the most overrated pitchers because of not only because of, but they saw great spikes or declines, improvements in their statistics in a shortened year against a poor division. So let me start there. So I don't even have him in my discussion for top 3. Okay.
Wow.
Second thing, look, he had a great year in 2018, a 2.21 ERA with a 1.09 WHIP. All right. Great year. Then he comes back the following year, 4.48 with a 1.25. All right. So average at best. Then he put up an abbreviated year, another great year. The year before his 2.21 ERA, it was 4.19 with a 1.3 WHIP. All right. So this guy has had a good year and a half. Outside of that, he's a 3.9 ERA with a 1.26 WHIP. That's what he is. He's 30 years old. I mean, if you're going to peak, I mean, I don't know. He's getting a little late there to peak. And, I'm just not convinced, especially number 1 overall, knowing that he's put together a year and a half of good stats. Ain't no way I'm touching Trevor Bauer number 1.
So here's the logic. Okay. And I see what you're saying. I understand that. But he played on a terrible team in Cincinnati. Okay. So, and this is where a lot of people want to say whether we throw out 2020 or not, I'm taking it for Trevor Bauer because, John, this guy had 100 strikeouts with a 0.79 WHIP. That is elite territory, right? Elite.
Over a full season. It was a third of a season. 11
It doesn't
stars,
matter.
not 32.
It doesn't matter.
But that's having a player be elite in April and May in a regular year. That doesn't make him elite just because he had 2 good months.
So 12-8, 17-9, and 12-6 were a mirage. I don't think so.
You're talking about wins?
12-8, 17-9, 12-6.
I am not questioning that he will not win 15 games.
I think he wins 17 to 18 games.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Because of the team. Only be
absolutely. 100. Well, that's where wins come. You know what I mean? It's not just right. That definitely is a huge part of it. So yeah, I agree with you there. The wins may be there. I have him. I got him at 14 wins. I'm just middle of the road from what I've seen over his career to the elite levels that he's pitched. And the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm not taking a chance in the first round, let alone first overall pick. I'm taking a sure thing, because if he does revert back to one of his prior years that was not 18 or 2020, your season's over. Your season's over.
I don't think so, man. I don't think so at all. Because listen, what are we talking about here? Yeah, look at Jacob deGrom. Okay, and now with all due respect, except for ERA, they're basically middle of the road. Both of them. They both have the same strikeouts per win potential. They're both at 5.88. Jacob deGrom has not even won any more games than Trevor Bauer. So, so what I'm saying is, I still look at, because obviously I love Jacob deGrom. Obviously, I mean, his ERA speaks for itself. But I'm not winning because of ERA. I'm not winning fantasy baseball head to head because of ERA. Okay, I'm not even looking at that. I'm looking at strikeouts. I'm looking at WHIP, and I'm looking at wins. And I'm looking at I'm looking at team potential. That's what I'm looking at. So, in my opinion, when you stack up Jacob deGrom versus Trevor Bauer, I think they're kind of middle of the road in the sense of he connects to each other's dots when it comes to the offense or the pitching categories. But then you just look at the X factor, which is the team. And I think the Dodgers are going to be better than the Mets. And I think that's a +3 to +5 win potential. And I think that's where Trevor Bauer goes over the top. Now, if we're not talking about Trevor Bauer or Jacob deGrom, are you telling me that you would take Garrett Cole over both of those guys? Are you saying that maybe you think he's the better option?
deGrom, Cole, to me, are 1, 2. Those are the locks. Those are the only two that I am 100% comfortable with. Bieber would be 1B or whatever. Call it. He's a step down.
What makes you more comfortable in Bieber than Bauer? Because I think Bieber doesn't even have the track record.
He doesn't, and that's why he's below Cole and deGrom. I just believe in Bieber a little bit more. Bieber is 25 years old versus 30 years old. This is a guy that's coming up, not kind of already leveling off. Now, you're absolutely right. See, one of the things you said, you look at WHIP, strikeouts, and wins. I look at WHIP, strikeouts, and for the most part, ERA. All right. Yes, there is no question that that the Dodgers will put up more wins and that their starting pitchers will put up more wins. But you know what? I'll take the luck or the crappy luck if my guy pitches lights out. Look, for whatever reason, deGrom didn't win games because they didn't hit for him. Period. It was almost comical how every game he started, he had 0 run support.
True.
Look, I count that as a fluke, not something that's going to happen. So I believe that deGrom's win totals would have been up. Bieber, like, same thing. 2020, he was stellar. 1.6 ERA with a 0.87 WHIP. You know what I mean? So the dude had 122 Ks in 77 innings. So the strikeout per inning is even higher. The peripherals are the same. And, even going back another year, it was a 3.28 ERA with a 106 WHIP. So now I have consecutive, that year and a half that, I said about Bieber, there was a full year blip in the middle. This is a 25-year-old that has done this for a year and a half, and 2020 was even better than 2019. So I just believe in him a little bit more than Trevor Bauer.
Well, I'm going to say one more thing, okay? Because you know how I am. I got to keep going, and I love it. It's funny. Al says Tony doesn't agree with anything you're saying, John. LOL. Welcome back. Nice to see you, John. What's up, Al?
What's up?
That's funny. We'll get to Aaron Nolan in the middle. Adam, what's up, buddy? How you doing? And we're gonna get to Rick's comment in a second about Harper could have an MVP statistical year, but on 4th place team. I think you're so wrong, Rick. So wrong at many levels. 4th place team, you're out of your mind. But anyway, John, you keep mentioning this 30-year-old number for Trevor Bauer. Let me just throw something at you, and I'm not going to tell you who this player is. Okay, but from the time he turned 30 years old, 19-4 18-9, 19-9, 19-9, 17-11, 16-6. That's age 30 to 36. Now,
Max Scherzer.
No.
Oh, I thought for sure because Max Scherzer, I was not a believer in him either. He was a late bloomer.
It's actually Greg Maddux.
Okay.
Which I obviously listen. I am not saying Trevor Bauer is Greg Maddux. I'm just saying that sometimes. Okay, because remember, Maddox was on the Cubs when he really started to hit it. Even though he was really good with the Cubs, he really became electric when he was with the Braves. Okay, so a better team who won all the pennants. So that's why I'm trying to make this comparison. And listen, I respect everything you're saying. I just think this is that year where 30 years old Trevor Bauer on a better team shows that he is the best player in fantasy this year when it comes to being a pitcher. Just throwing that out there, man. Just throwing it out there, giving you a little comparison to why I'm thinking what I'm thinking.
You want to go there? Here, I'll go head to head, and we'll see at the end of the year.
Yes,
and I'm gonna take my number one. Okay, or no, it's just which one finishes higher. And I'm not going to go the easy route with DeGrom or Cole or Bieber. I'm not taking my top three. Lucas Giolito will outperform Trevor Bauer.
From the White Sox. You're going G-Man. Okay.
Not because I think he's the best pitcher in the world, but
we'll see.
Equal comparison. That's not a gimme. So I will put Giolito head up on Bauer.
So I'm just going to throw this out there for everybody to know. So when Trevor Bauer this year, okay, goes 17-9 with a 2.10 ERA and wins the Cy Young Award for the Dodgers, are going to say, "Hey, John, where was G-Man at?" Just saying, John. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll see what happens. So,
look, I will. No, Bauer is going up there. I'm lower on him. Like industry experts basically have him a top 5. All right, I'm just not sold on him.
Love them this year. So let's get it. We're about 42 minutes. We want to say we want to go 45. We didn't even get any football talk, but who cares?
I saw Aaron Nola question.
Yes. So Adam wants to know, where did Aaron Nola draft? So where did he get drafted at in your draft? So I know his ADP. I think he's been drafted as the 7th pitcher overall. I'm not sure where he went in your draft, John, but where did he go?
Well, I got Nola at 10 on my. I have him at 10 on my draft board.
Okay.
He can move all the way up to 6. I mean, in reality, it's that next group that, look, if I miss out on the big guns, I'm fine with one of these, but I got to get one of these 10 pitchers, and Nola rounds it out right after Trevor Bauer for me. I actually drafted Nola as my second pitcher on the 4th pick of the 3rd round. So that would have been 24th overall. I actually went Aaron Nola. So nice. It was earlier than I wanted, but it was Giolito went Walker Buehler, Trevor Bauer, Max Scherzer, Yu Darvish, Bieber, DeGrom, Cole. They all went, and sitting there, it's like I got to get the guy while he's there. So I went Nola.
The biggest knock on Nola is his statistics in September and October. But when you're looking at it from a fantasy perspective, you don't need him to pitch in October. You just need him to pitch in September. So if he gives you one out of those 2 months, he's going to be a pretty good factor for you. And, and with the Phillies, depending on I still think they're going to win the NL East. I know it's a little different than you, Rick, who thinks they're going to be 4th place, which I still don't understand that. We'll talk about that another time. But I think that they're going to have plenty of opportunities to get behind Nola, because you talked about DeGrom. Remember, we went through a year with Aaron Nola where he was getting 0 run support. And right, remember that. So
absolutely,
I think that changes a little bit this year because the Phillies lineup is insanely better than it has been. I know there's a lot of question marks, but I think if they all come together, at least 75 to 80%, they're going to have a really good run scoring lineup, which will help Aaron Nola.
Yeah. Nola also, he went 26th overall in my 12th teamer.
So top 30.
Second pick of the 3rd round.
That's not bad. That's a good spot.
He was sandwiched between Giolito and Kershaw.
Yeah. Now there's a guy I don't trust is Kershaw.
Well, that was those sandwich picks were mine. I went Giolito, Kershaw.
Did you?
Yes.
I love it.
And I wanted Nola, so I got Nola in one league, but I wanted to pair him up with Giolito.
Well, Giolito's got the Cy Young talk written all over him this year. So we'll see what happens with him in Chicago. But Al wants to know. He says we need some type of wager on that, boys. Here's the thing, Al. This is what I will say. If John's right, I'm going to buy him a new clock, an actual real clock in the background for Steelers.
A real clock.
I'm going to have my wife make him one with her wood making business, and we're going to throw that up on the wall so we can actually see some hands on that thing in the background. But John, let's get into our top fives here, and I think this is fun. We don't want to go through every position. This is just top five overall. Your top five when we talk about hitting, and top five pitching. Your top five pitchers who we pretty much alluded to most of them, but we'll go through them again because I want to get these down because I want to get these posted. So we'll make an image up and we'll get it online. We'll throw it out there. John's top five, Tony's top five, and then we'll be able to compare. Okay. So it'll be a good thing to look back on. So right off the cuff, and let's go hitters first because we've already kind of touched on pitchers. We'll go back to pitchers, but hitters first. I think this could be a very interesting top five because number one, the young power potential of some of these kids in Major League Baseball right now is just phenomenal. They're going to be very, very exciting to watch. But there's one guy who I think could have his best fantasy year of all time, and that's Mike Trout. I don't know if you know this, and I only know this because I was doing some research on it. Mike Trout has only hit the century mark when it comes to RBIs 3 times in his entire career. And this is a year where he has most likely the best lineup ever that he's ever played in. If Ohtani can continue to stay healthy, right? Rendon, you have guys like Dexter Fowler who are going to play a nice little part in there. Upton, as long as he can stay healthy, right? This is a tremendous lineup for the Angels. So I really like Mike Trout this year, but I'll tell you right now, my top five for me, okay, Juan Soto for me is number one. To me, he is the best player in baseball. I love Juan Soto. The numbers he puts up he does it all, and they're already talking about him stealing more bases this year for Washington. So for me, he's number one, followed by Ronald Acuna Jr. is my number two. Mike Trout for me is my number three, followed by Fernando Tatis Jr., and then rounding out my top five is Mookie Betts. So, John, what do you have for your top five?
I think that's the consensus players. So we have the same players.
Oh, nice.
Slightly different order. And I'll tell you, I've been back and forth. I had third overall pick in my one draft, and I was torn between Trout and Tatis.
So do you agree? Not to cut you off, do you agree on Trout?
Not that
I want to get your take.
Trout is not going to steal bases like he used to. He is not getting double-digit stolen bases. That is the only knock on him. Outside of that, he will have 40-plus home runs, 100 runs, 100 ribbies, and I expect him to hit around 300. Okay. So the only thing that's holding him back is he's no longer a 15, 20 steal guy.
Makes sense.
So that's right. But I was between Trout and Tatis, and truthfully, statistics-wise, I have Tatis grading out as the number one player overall.
Nice. Okay.
I would not take him number one. I would take Acuna one, who is my number one. Tatis number two. I took Trout over him because the shoulder injury scared me. Okay. I was drafting right after he had it. If there was no shoulder injury, Tatis would have been on my team at third overall. But I'm going Acuna, Tatis, Betts, Trout, then Soto.
I love it.
And really, the Trout and Soto, the only reason why those guys are 4 and 5 is because the stolen base potential isn't there.
But you know what's awesome about it is I have Soto number one and you have him number 5. We have the same players in our top 5, but we completely flipped at the top spot. I love it.
Look, I like Soto. It wouldn't shock me if he was number one overall. There's no question he could do it. But a little bit to what Rick said. I mean, there are some guys that are really up in that talk that don't get the. I mean, I could see Trevor Story, I could see Lindor,
Wow.
and I could see Jose Ramirez all being top 5 at the end of the year,
You know,
especially Jose Ramirez.
Jose Ramirez is a guy we all forget about. I know I do all the time. And I think it's just because he plays in Cleveland. But I mean, honestly, like, he does it all. Jose Ramirez does it all. And you're right. He could essentially be that top 5. He really could. Now, Rick says Acuna, Tatis, Trout, Soto, Betts. So for the most part, we're all pretty much on a consensus on Acuna has to be in that top 2 spot. So yeah, listen, you can't go wrong with any of those guys, though. I'll tell you that. Now let me go to pitching. And
we already know this is a disaster.
You already know who my number 1 is. Okay. So, right away, I think we're going to kind of be, I think my 5 is going to kind of surprise you a little bit, but Trevor Bauer, number 1 for me, who I still think is a Cy Young candidate this year and will have an electric year for the Dodgers, followed up by Jacob deGrom at number 2. Garrett Cole is my number 3. Bieber is my number 4. And I'm following it up with Mr. Flaherty at number 5. I think Flaherty is going to have a really good year for St. Louis. I like what he's done the last 2 years. I am taking what he did in an abbreviated season and looking at his stats overall. And I think just with that team out there with a different kind of lineup, I think that they're looking pretty good. And I think he's a wild card to be a top 5 pitcher. What do you think?
Flaherty, it's possible. I actually have him just outside the top 10, but I can absolutely see him performing there. If I miss out on the top 10, or especially when I'm looking at that second pitcher, definitely coming into the consideration. I would love to have a Flaherty, Luis Castillo type as number 2. So I'll just toss Bauer out the window. Your 2, 3, 4 is my 1, 2, 3. So deGrom, Cole, Bieber, to me, that's pretty much no question. I already said the whole next group. I mean, you could shuffle guys left and right, and I see where I have them, grading out. But I go back and forth on this. You ask me tomorrow, it could be different. Right now, I'm going with Lucas Giolito at 4. And I'm going with Yu Darvish at 5.
Oh, you're going on that playoff bound San Diego team. I like it.
Yeah, the only thing is, I mean, his walks scare me. I mean, the same thing I said about Bauer, it almost holds true for Yu Darvish. And that's why I have them actually ranked 8 and 9, because it's like an enigma. Like, they put up these great stellar Cy Young years, but then, like, all of a sudden there's a big blip in the screen for a year. And, like, if they got Darvish would always have issues with walks. So it kind of scares me off from that number 1 guy. I don't want that inflated whip. But I mean, they definitely have the talent to do it, and they can. Yeah, grading out on my thing, not like I said, they weren't in my top 5, but the 2 old men, I'll tell you what, I don't think are getting enough credit.
Who's the old men?
Who were number 1 and number 2 overall picks at pitcher over the past 5 years?
It's all about Kershaw getting no love,
and Scherzer.
Here's the thing about Kershaw. His health is the scariest thing, right? He every year he has some kind of back designation, right? And it's scary. And Max Scherzer, I thought last year was going to be the year of his decline. I just don't think you can continue to pitch 200 plus innings year in and year out at that age, and to pitch with that kind of throwing motion, that dominant of a speed, and not have a down year. And it scares me. I don't want to be that guy to pick him when he has a down year. Now, that's the only thing that scares me. I think that might be what's scaring everybody else.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, Kershaw, to me, look, I know it seems like he's been pitching forever. I mean, the dude's 33. It's not like he's completely over the hill. Yes, he's had issues. He hasn't started 30 games, and I can't, in 5 years. So I get that. But at the same time, I mean, 2018, and these are his worst years. 2018, 104 whip. 2019, 104 whip. 2020, 0.84. Like, you don't really think about it,
man.
Right. And ERA, 2.7, 303, 2.16. Like, you look at this, even in his worst year, it was a 3.03 ERA with a 1 or 1.04 whip. That's his worst year. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you just can't put, and you already mentioned the Dodgers, and what that means for win total. I just think he's getting a little overlooked. Scherzer scares me a little bit more. With like you said, he's had a little bit of the injury issues. But once again, I mean, can he come back? He's a little older. He's now sitting at that 36. This is where, you start to potentially break down, where you might have to reinvent yourself if the heater's not there like it used to be. You lose a mile an hour, 1 or 2 miles an hour on your pitch. I'll tell you what, take that fastball from whatever it is at 95 and bring it down to 93 and see how you do out in Major League Baseball. It ain't going to be good.
Yep. Not everybody.
And I don't know what Scherzer. I don't know what Scherzer's pitching now. I'm just saying it as a general statement.
No, you're right.
I mean, I definitely see more concern with Scherzer than with Kershaw, but at the same time, I mean, the dude is still striking. He still strikes out more than almost anybody in baseball, regardless.
His K per 9 is pretty sick.
So, yes, he's getting up there. This is one of the ones, we said, do we keep or do we throw out 2020? 2020 was abysmal for him. A 3.70 ERA with a 1.38 whip. That was abysmal. Strikeouts, they were still there. But, with his injuries, now it's okay. Now he's hitting at 36. Was that truly a sign of a decline? Because in your 36 year, little bit different than, another pitcher that might be 33.
No, you're right. And when people lose velocity, not everybody can come back from that, right? You watch guys that listen. Greg Maddux, he's an aberration, right? I mean,
Verlander was the biggest one.
Well,
Verlander's,
but remember, he gained speed.
But his career was just about done in Detroit.
You're right.
That's when he had a terrible, terrible year. He didn't have his velocity. He went to Houston. He reinvented himself as a pitcher, similar to, I believe, Pedro did it.
Yep.
Where he, some of them guys around that age 34, when you ain't beating these guys with the heater, you got to learn the art of pitching,
Yeah, man.
And look, you can make a 93 mile an hour fastball look good if you're painting the corners on sliders and curveballs and off speed stuff.
No, you're right. Yeah, I mean that's why I loved watching Greg Maddux and Pedro Martinez pitch. Talk about hitting the black. I mean, they made that term, hitting the black. That inside cutting, tailing fastball it was unhittable at times. And it was only Tom Glavine's another one. Tom Glavine was hitting like 88. But right, how about old man Jamie Moyer for the Phillies? Right? I mean, think about it. It's crazy. Rick checking in with his top 5. I like this because it's very different. Same names he has Castillo routed out the top 5.
Yep. I got Castillo, Flaherty, both of them are sitting right outside of my top 10. Yes, absolutely can see a stellar year from either of them.
He always had to Adam checking in, talking about what we're talking about. Old pitch. He talking about John Smoltz, another guy, man.
Starter or closer.
Wow. How about when he went to the pen, man? He was electric.
Yep.
I mean, wow. It is the art. You said art of pitching, and that's exactly how to explain it. Because if you are a baseball fan, that's why I kind of get mad with all these people that are trying to change the game. Let's hurry it up. We want more home runs. We want the ball juice. Man, you're taking away from the art of the game, man. The science between the hitter and the batter and the catcher, right? I can't stand it. We're doing that because I love to watch a good pitcher pitch.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it, man. We brought this up before, John, and I'm pretty sure you were a part of that episode. If you could watch one pitcher pitch, whether he could be retired right now, he could be in heaven right now, or he could be active. I mentioning Johan Santana because for me, when Johan Santana was pitching for the Twins as Cy Young, even though in his first couple years to Mets when he signed that big money contract, I don't know if there was a pitcher in baseball that was pitching at a more dominant level than Johan Santana. And and again, not to mention, how about watching a guy like Cole Hamels when he like that year, that World Series run? I mean, oh my God, he was unstoppable, and you could watch it, right? You could just watch him pitch an entire game and not be bored.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not talking a starter. I mean, still the Mariano Rivera.
Got to go with Mo.
I mean, that was as much as there's ever been a lights out guy, and just watch him on the mound and just work it out there. I mean, him, if I got to go starter, I mean, truthfully, I'm going Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
I loved watching Clemens pitch. All right, say steroids, whatever. Look, get it. No, I don't even want to get into that discussion.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I enjoyed watching Roger Clemens pitch. I really did.
The Rocket, man. Listen, the way he changed speeds, he was just so goddamn powerful. Adam checking in says Nolan Ryan. I mean, yeah, another right.
That was almost the only other name that I was going to drop, but I didn't really watch him. Like, I didn't really watch him pitch full games, like, with the way he was. But I see in highlights, Nolan Ryan, I think, was when we had our all-time fantasy draft, the 4-sport draft.
Yes,
I believe Nolan Ryan was my second round pick. Yeah, for baseball.
We have to do one of them coming up. That was fun. Yeah. Rick says Pedro, which I completely agree. Adam checking in says Bradledge is a closer, and that 2008 year was a ridiculous. Cliff Lee's a starter, but how about this? How are we leaving out Roy Halladay? Rest in peace. I mean, you talk about a guy on the mound that you could watch from inning to inning, the way he would just pick apart hitters. Roy Halladay was a mad scientist on the mound. And this goes whether he was in Toronto or Philadelphia. It doesn't matter. He was that damn good, man. He really was. We could go back so many. I love when we start mentioning these names because some of these pitchers are just phenomenal. And again, right now, I'm not going to say that there's not that kind of dominance in the game. No disrespect to guys like Blake Snell, who has some really good stuff, and DeGrom, and Syndergaard before he got hurt a little bit, and Scherzer's been dominant. But the art of the pitching position has changed over the past few years. I mean, you look at it at a time probably between like maybe 85 to like the year 2000. It was maybe even 2005, 2010 at the latest. But that realm of pitching, that era of pitching, that was some scientific theory right there, man. I'm gonna tell you, that was some good stuff, 100%. Yeah. Adam, before we go, Adam says Dennis Eckersley. There's another. Got to go with Eck, right? Got to go with Eck. You knew when Eck came out, game was on the mind. And I'll tell you, before we go, a secret sleeper for me, pitcher that I used to like pitch back in the day was honestly Jack Morris. I used to like Jack Morris. He didn't overpower anybody. He really didn't, but he just knew the strike zone, man.
David Wells.
That's a great name. David, but Boomer.
Little Pudgy Wells.
Yes, Boomer. Rick says my father-in-law always said Koufax. Yep, Sandy Koufax. I mean, I've never watched Sandy Koufax, right? But I mean, Sandy Koufax, 100%. If you go back and watch old school baseball, I'm sure. I mean, listen, I don't know if I'd rather watch a player hit 3 home runs or watch a pitcher pitch a perfect game. I'd probably want to watch a pitcher pitch a perfect game instead of watch 3 home runs, right? It's just me because I just think I would be in my element, man. I love every minute of it. I
can't wait to find out what happens opening day. Who's
man.
Going to be the star?
Absolutely.
Who's going to be Tuffy Rhodes this year?
Who's going to be Tuffy Rhodes?
Who's Tuffy Rhodes?
There's that name. And with that, again, everybody for tuning in, thank you so much. We went an hour and 5 minutes. Great to have John back talking some baseball. We had a little football on the table, but you know what? We just slide that the next week because guess what? We have plenty of time to talk football, right? Football is not changing. But tomorrow, as we record this episode, it is live, but it will be podcasted as always. Remember, it's episode Wednesday night. This is the episode that goes down where Tony Jigsaw Cotillo takes Trevor Bauer to be the top overall player, and John Coker, PGH, Don 36 shakes his head and says, dude, what kind of crack are you smoking? So we will see what happens in October, and we'll see if we're going to be buying a new Steelers clock for that wall behind John. But for anyhow, for everybody checking in, we appreciate it. Continue to support, continue to love. Check that bobblehead contest. Get in that April 23rd. We got 4, 2 of each that we're giving away. Check the 5 prize packs from Yingling. We'll be giving away them as well. Keep subscribing to the page. We got so much. I can't say the word much even more. So much more in store for everybody. So like I say, as always, everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and we will catch you next week.